The other key piece of the Connect Ed and Project Cluster Flocks glossary, I guess the top two words to define, other than belonging, it is story. And when we say story, we mean several different things. First is information about something that happened to someone. It's their perspective of an experience. Only one person has it. Every single story is different for every single person. So even if you have an experience with someone and you're shoulder to shoulder in the midst of the experiences that you bring to that experience, how you've interpreted everything that's happened to you in your life, all of your previous perspectives, everything that you know and feel and sense, who you are, changes and makes different your experience and your perspective than this person who's standing shoulder to shoulder with you in the same experience. So one thing that a story is the perspective of an experience. Another thing that a story is a portal. So if I tell you a story about me, at the point in time that I tell you that story, I open my life, my story, the perspectives I have of my experiences, I open those to you, and you can enter into that story and have a version of an experience yourself. You can develop perspectives of my story, and you can learn about my experiences and my perspectives. You can find out all kinds of things about my identity. You can find out all kinds of things about what it is, my purpose, what it is that I offer the world. And you can find out what I might need by looking at how I interact with the other elements of my story. So, a perspective of an experience, a portal. The other thing is, stories are the things that we tell ourselves about who we are and how the world works that are mostly internal. You could say that those are perspectives of experience, but I'm just talking about, like, particularly the thing that I'm thinking of is my perception of myself and my place in the world. So, like, all of the bad things that have happened to me, my shame and embarrassment, my mistakes and failures, all the kudos that I've been given, my successes and achievements, all of those things added up that go through my head and sort of set the tone for how I make my way in the world. So those are three key things about story that are important to remember. And I'll also say there are 5 different parts of story. Now, there's lots of people who've done story analysis and come up with many more and different ways of looking at it. And I've looked at Joseph Campbell and some of the stuff from Aristotle and Dan Harmon. And there's another great book called The 7 Basic Plots. I can't remember what the 7 of them are, who the author is. Lots of people have done it. I've shrunk them down just for simplicity to 5 C's. So every story has a character who is defined by what they want. And as the character goes through the story, they demonstrate their identity, their purpose, and their needs. And so if I tell you a story that has me in it as the character, that's how you can learn about that sort of stuff. So there's character, then there's crucible. This is the thing that's in the way of what the character wants, right? So in the context, in the boundaries of a story, there's usually a goal, something that is motivating the character, and the crucible is the obstacle to that. It's the adversity that the character has to face in order to accomplish their goal, reach the end of the story, become the realized as a hero, whatever it is. So it's that obstacle, but it's also the thing that refines the character. If you didn't start your story with "you're not going to believe what happened to me this weekend," not only would it be boring, but there would be no process, no change, improvement in the life of the character. And that's really what we relate to in the story. So the reason we call it the crucible is because a crucible is something that refines. It takes, like, the impurities out of a substance, and that's what happens to the character in the crucible. Two different kinds of relationships are really important to the character of a story. The first one is the coach. So character, crucible, and coach. The coach is somebody who comes alongside the character. Usually they're more powerful, and they give the character confidence. They help them make decisions. They come up with a plan for dealing with their adversity. They give them courage. And then usually, by the time the character is ready to emerge from the crucible, which I forgot to say a lot of times, the coach is the instigator that causes the character to enter into the crucible. If you think like Bilbo and Frodo going on the adventure, Gandalf was the coach. Anyway, that the coach will often leave as the character is emerging from the crucible, when they've fought the dragon and resisted the temptress and gone in the belly of the whale and done all those kind of things. As they're emerging as the heroic version of themselves, oftentimes the coach will leave. And that's why the hero, the character is the hero of the story, because the coach has stepped out of the way. And then community. So the coach and the community, the relational aspects of the story. And the community is lots of different people, can be positive or negative influences, but they're the ones that go through the story with the character. So they have all kinds of different roles, but they're always critical, because it's in the context of those relationships that we see a lot about who the character is, and we understand their identity, purpose, and needs. And then the last piece of story is change. In the beginning of the story, you could describe the character in a particular way, and as they go through the story, you can see characteristics start to emerge, and strengths rising up, weaknesses going away. Obviously, this is all the way I'm describing it right now, is if it's a story that's going to end up with a happy ending. And a lot of times that's not the case. There's a lot of times a character gets caught in like a whirlpool where they're going back and forth between positive and negative character traits, and they're having a hard time sort of rooting into who they really are. I believe that humans have intrinsic goodness in them, and we're always struggling to sort of let that be our predominant approach to our relationships and our place in the world. And that's what we're hoping happens, that the character enters into the crucible, they're coached by their coach, they participate relationally with their community, they deal with all of the stuff in the deep dark pit of their crucible, and as they emerge, they have gained a strength or a skill or a capacity of some type that Joseph Campbell would call a boon that they can offer their fellow man. And so as they emerge, they have this thing that they can do that they wouldn't have been able to do. They wouldn't have been able to offer their community if they hadn't gone through all of the travail. And that's the 5 parts of a story, and are helpful to remember when you are sharing a story. The last thing that I want to say about what a story is it's a connecting thing. It's a kind of shared entertainment. We find commonality in our stories. We find laughter and tears and emotional expression within all of those things. And so when we share our stories, we give gifts to each other that we can actually enter in together. So remember those 4 things: the perspective of experience, the portal, the messages of our own that we tell ourselves, the gift that we give and share with each other, and the 5 C's: character, crucible, coach, community, and change. If you keep all of those things in mind, even a little bit, it will help you a lot in your storytelling endeavors.